rubbish.
Right, we are now live. We are back. We are back in the room.
Brilliant.
This is our second attempt, as the first attempt kind of went a little bit horrifically wrong because we are both. What was the term we used the other day? Technical Neanderthals.
Technical Neanderthals, definitely, yeah. All right. So, Kyle, we started off with you just saying, like, you know, about KaiZen, why you started it. Let's give it a go, and then hopefully the Google Hangout won't decide to start repeating exactly everything back in front of you again.
Yeah, well, I kind of got a little bit excited because when it did that, I thought it was going to do all the work for me. I thought I could go out, but
Brilliant.
So,
yeah, so
KaiZen.
what does it stand for? You know, why did you start it?
Okay, well, KaiZen originally started. It was sort of my system of personal training originally. That's where it all came from. It was my way of trying to systematize what I did and have a strong set of principles that would get great results for people. That's how it started out. And the name KaiZen, or KaiZen, is like a Japanese term for ongoing continued improvement, or that's one rough translation anyway. And also the name worked as an acronym. So we had kinetic mastery, applied mindset, intake, nutrition, hydration, Zen for the or the calmer state, energy in versus energy out. That was basically, there was a whole set of principles that was kind of all meant to be KaiZen for PT, that you looked at a lot of the martial arts stuff as well, and it's kind of evolved from that really. So it's now kind of less of a personal training thing and more of a personal coaching system. So now the main philosophy of KaiZen really is about creating change or personal transformation, basically through having a more enjoyable process. So it's pretty much the long and short of it really, is just making it more fun. And a lot of I use a lot of the martial arts more so now than I used to, I think, to kind of help people do that. So it's a really long-winded answer to a really simple question, but the long and short of it basically is making people look and feel good using martial arts and coaching. There we go.
Awesome. No, that's cool. That's fine. I'm glad I helped you clarify your definition as well on that. Also, one of the things that I'd love to know, Kyle, and it's something, you know, I've found myself doing in my own coaching business, you know, and I've seen it on Facebook with other coaches, and I'm sure you must. And you know, it's like we do this and this transformation, and it's like, you know what? Let's get to the nuts and bolts, right? We're here to serve the general public, yeah. All right. Okay, like when I do my rehab stuff, and if I put long-winded technical, you know, they look at it and go, "What are you talking about?" Yeah. So why would someone, like a member of the public, you know, we you know, I know you know your stuff. Why would they want to choose you in the most simple, concise, over like Joe Blogg's personal training? If they're feeling rubbish about themselves and they want to get some self-esteem back, like you said, and change their nutrition and do the coaching thing, why would they choose KaiZen over, you know, Joe Bloggs down the road? What would it be? What would be the biggest difference that separates you from that?
No, that's a good question, Dave. I think the main reason really is, obviously results are one thing. Everybody promises results and everything else. I think a lot of it is more about the journey. And I think the main thing that would draw someone to what I do is the fact that I don't just talk about it being a personal journey and then give everybody the same program like a lot of PTs do. And, you know, for me, it's very personalized in the sense that people that work with me are very involved in the creation of their programs, and not just their exercise programs, but also, you know, what they're going to do in terms of nutrition, what changes they're going to make within their lifestyle, you know. So it's a very, very holistic approach. So we look at stress, we look at food, we look at sleep, we look at what's going on in people's lives. We don't just look at exercise. It's not just another one of those programs where you turn up and just go, right, I'm going to beast you for an hour, follow this diet plan, and I'll see you next week. Oh, by the way, thank you very much. That'll be 150 quid. It's a much more of a what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of it's more of an inclusive journey as opposed to a dictatorship. So yeah, so instead of me kind of just dictating what someone's going to do, we create agreements based on one, what they think they're going to enjoy, two, what they think they can actually do. So, we look at kind of barriers and obstructions and things that are getting in the way, and we don't just go, well, we'll get over it. We look at working a solution for it, and if it's something that we can't work with, then we look at another strategy. And it's the same thing with exercise as well. I'm a firm believer that people will stick to things if they enjoy it more. If they're turning up to me and they hate it, or I'm making them feel like, excuse me, making them feel like they want to throw up every time they walk out the door, then it's not going to be a long-term workable solution. There's not going to be any transformation there. It's only ever going to be a short-term program. So the aim really is for everybody who walks in my door to leave feeling better, or feeling better than when they did when they walk in. That's kind of like the big thing, and the results come from that, and they come from the inclusion and the involvement with creating the programs and the agreements. Again, another long-winded answer to another simple question, but there you go.
Right, we'll go with it as a reoccurring theme. So that's a question that I ask, not a problem. I don't know, when we put this out, we might want to advise people that this is a 3-hour Google Hangout rather than a 30-minute chat. That's cool. Obviously, like you said, about the results and people feeling better about themselves. Would you say that's the number one real reason? And you and I have both studied under the same man, Zach Moy, about the whole thing is not the thing. They might come in thinking that they want martial arts. They might come in thinking that they want the nutrition or the exercise, but is that the real reason that the vast majority of your clients come in? Is they basically don't like or love themselves? They feel, excuse my language, crap about who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, at the end of the day, exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle, and all these things that kind of we preach as being our business as such, they're all secondary. They're all an effect of kind of where a person is at any given time. It's all to do with like how we feel, and what's going on in our heads will dictate what sort of choices we make. People out there know the gist of what to do. Everybody knows that eating an apple is going to be better than going to McDonald's. Everybody knows that doing a workout is going to do more for your fitness than sitting watching TV. People know these things. The problem is a lot of it comes back to what's going on in their head or their brain at any given time. And the reality is, they don't. Although they come to us thinking sometimes that they want the workout, it's not the workout they're after. It's like you say, it's how it's going to make them feel. There's usually something rooted underneath that, so they want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel sexy for their partner. They want to look good going on the beach. They don't want to feel judged. All these kinds of things that go on in their heads. The real motivation tends to be a lot deeper than just, I want to tone up my arms, or I want a nice butt, or there's the stuff that we hear all the time. There's usually something deeper going on there. I can't remember what the original question was now. There was some. Go on, sorry.
It was basically like I said about, like you said about them feeling better about themselves, and that you mentioned it a few times through some of your answers. Is that the number one real reason why people actually get in the door, even if they don't know it themselves at the time?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at the two kind of main reasons why people do anything, right, it's either to gain pleasure or to move away from pain. Mm-hmm. So either they're in some kind of pain, either physically or emotionally, that's linked to their body image or their health, or it could be something else going on in their life. It could be something to do with their relationship or whatever else. And what tends to happen is that they create a meaning of some sort that links it to their body image or their fitness or something else. So, for example, if we look at relationships, right? Mm-hmm. If someone feels that maybe the spark's gone out of their relationship a little bit, and they link it maybe, well, I've let myself go over the last few years, then yeah, they start to think, well, I need to get fit again, and all these things that go around. But if you usually peel back, you will come back to that one thing, and usually it will be either to move towards pleasure or to move away from pain. So that's kind of what I mean really by saying, making people feel better about themselves or make them feel good. It's either to move them away from pain or literally to make them feel good. And say everybody's reason is going to be different, everybody's story is going to be different, but usually it comes back to one of those two things.
Awesome. Cheers. Thank you for that answer, Carl. Now I'm going to chuck you right in at the deep end. One, I've known you for a while. You were my best man at my wedding, and I like commenting you. You're almost like the brother that I didn't have. So.
Sorry, Dave. I can't hear you, mate. Sorry.
Is that a bit better?
There we go. There we go.
Sorry, I've done the Neanderthal thing and knocked my head mic up out the way of my mouth. So for some reason, when it's not next to my face, it doesn't pick my voice up.
Oh, right.
I was just saying, Carl, I want to chuck you in at the deep end because you're more like a little brother. I've known you for so long. It's too much fun just to wind you up. There's no real reason for this question in the interview. No. What I want to know, Carl, why did you really set it up? Because obviously you've gone through what you want to do with people and that. But what about you? What's your personal reason for setting up KaiZen? Why did you do that? Why do you want to help these people feel better about themselves?
Oh, good question. Right. Okay. The main reason I set it up was I had a lot of confidence issues and stuff as a kid. I was quite shy. I wasn't the most outspoken, wasn't most outgoing. I did suffer with some bullying as well when I was a bit younger. And a lot of it came back to when I got into martial arts. It did a lot for me. It helped me find myself, and something that I've always sort of loved about that is that it gave me a lot of confidence. It gave me a lot of self-belief and a lot of things that I didn't have. Now, most adults generally are not looking, or at least they don't necessarily think they're looking for, to feel more confident or to have more self-belief or something. That's usually kind of more of a deep-rooted thing. That's not usually the reason why they get into it as such. But for me, I always found that sort of coaching and listening to people and helping people kind of overcome their struggles, it gave me a stronger sense of purpose, and a lot of it links back to some of the things that the people have done for me and how I know how it made me feel. And to cut a long story short, it makes me feel good to be able to do the same thing for other people in some capacity. It may not be in exactly the same way, but in some capacity, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you've been through that, and most of the people that come in the door to speak to you, Kyle, are still in that dark space where they're still looking at surface reasons and not necessarily delving underneath to actually understand their real reasons why. What would you say to those people? When they're looking for a coach or a trainer, what is it that you would say? They're in that dark place. What would you say to them to actually get them to come out and be like, look, this is what you really want. This is how I'm going to help you. How would you help them transform? What's that initial question that gets them to go, oh, wow, okay, this could work?
Okay, so I think that's quite a challenging question. I think the first thing to do is kind of get some clarity around the story. How much of the story that you're telling yourself, how much of it do you know to be true? And how much of it is coming from a place of fear or threat that actually you may not necessarily know that's true, but it's just the voices in your head that are telling you that something is such a way. Because that's the thing, right? Most people, or all of us, we all do it. We all listen to the voice in our head. And we all assume that the voice in our head is right because, we're egotistical buggers and we like to be right all the time.
Yeah, indeed.
So, a lot of the time that the voice in our head tells us things, or the animal attack, as I like to call it, that our brain will tell us things to keep us in a place, to try and keep us in a safe and familiar place. Okay, so it's a case of identifying, it's picking out the pieces and looking at how much of the story is actually true, what the meaning behind the story is as well, because I mean as you well know, we learn through meaning and association. And again, just because we associate something or give something a meaning doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Just because we believe it to be true doesn't mean it is reality. So the first thing I kind of encourage people to do really is start to get a little bit clearer on what their story is and how much of it they know without fact, with as an absolute fact to be true, and how much of it is just the story that their brains tell, or that they're telling themselves, or that how much of it is just an animal attack.
Okay. When you say animal attack, Kyle, what is it you mean by that? You know, again, you know, like what someone's watching this and they go, okay, all right, this is what's an animal attack.
Okay, so yeah, animal attack. When I'm talking about that, I'm talking about, if we look at, for anyone that's heard of triune brain theory, basically you can separate the main functions of the brain into three parts. Or you've got the reptile, which is mostly concerned with immediate survival. So, you know, food, fight, freeze, flight, and fornication, or another way we like to describe it, as Dave well knows. Then you've got the mammal, which is more concerned with emotional, with social connection. And then obviously you've got the human, which is concerned with sort of self-growth, self-actualization, and goal setting, goal achieving, and everything else, right? So usually when we're in a place where, what I call the animal attack, is usually when we're in a place with some sort of mammalian threat. So there's usually some kind of threat to social connection, or it can be the brain associates something with death. So, for example, money is a good one that we can all relate to, right? So road rage example. This is a really easy example, right? People that suffer with road rage.
Yep.
Yeah. I need to get to work. They're holding me up. They're keeping me late. They're going to be late. I'm going to be late. My manager's going to be really annoyed with me. If I keep doing it, my manager's going to get really annoyed. I'm going to get the sack. If I get the sack, I'm not going to be able to feed my house. I'm not going to be able to feed me or my family. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to end up on the street. I'm going to be alone, and I'm going to die. Okay, yeah. So that's basically how the brain works. So what I call the animal attack is really when we sort of switch into either a reptilian brain or our mammalian brain, and usually anything kind of linked to emotion or social connection will trigger some sort of mammalian threat. It causes us to become emotional. Usually kind of rage and panic and stuff are kind of more extreme examples linked to immediate survival. But anything kind of to do with social connection or social threat usually triggers what I would call an animal attack, and that's usually in the format of the stories that we tell ourselves, and kind of more linked to the meaning we give things, because it's that part of the brain, the limbic system, or the limbic systems in the brain, that create those associations and those meanings and recognize those patterns, if you like. So the thing with the animal, the difference between the animal and the human, so to speak, is the animal likes things to stay exactly the same, because as far as the animal's concerned, the same thing, familiarity, is safety. You take yourself away from safety, you then trigger a threat, because there's no prediction, there's no response pattern in place. And that's what the brain does, right? It recognizes patterns and creates predictions and responses. So when that prediction and response is compromised or it's threatened, okay, it reverts back into those behaviors. And depending on the nature and the level of the threat, it'll either show, as emotion, or freeze, fight, or flight, as we call it, so procrastination, or putting things off, or running away from problems, or becoming really aggressive and really moody, or whatever else, right? Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about an animal attack. I'm actually talking about how the brain reacts to that threat, and a lot of the times when we tell ourselves stories about things, it's that are unhelpful, that cause us to maybe stop ourselves from moving forward, or revert back into what people might consider to be unhelpful behaviors. So, you know, it's that whole thing, oh, I know that eating that cake is going to be really bad for me. I know I'm going to feel rubbish about it. I don't want to do it. You know, you do it anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm kind of referring to as an animal attack more than anything else.
That makes more sense. That makes a lot more sense, you know. And are there any, you know, big takeaways that, you know, even if, you know, someone watches this and think, okay, that sounds good, or what would be the one biggest takeaway that you always want to leave people with, irrespective of if they become a client of yours or not, even if they just find some of your information, what would be the one biggest thing that you want them to take away from anything that you do with them?
It's a really simple one. Make the process as fun and enjoyable as possible.
Yeah.
It is really that simple. Yeah. If we're looking at things like habit and behaviors, you know, the more struggle, the more stressful, or the more difficult that it is to maintain a habit or a behavior, the harder it's going to be for the brain to accept. So it will never become a habit, right? We'll just constantly resist. Whereas the more fun and enjoyable and less stressful the process is, it's easier to integrate it into a habit, and eventually you get to a point where you don't have to think about it anymore. And that's kind of where the real secret to transformation lies, if you like. It's in changing habits and making the process fun. So if that is pretty much the simplest thing, the most important thing, to answer your question.
That's cool, man. That's cool. That's cool. Keep it simple. It's always a good motto. You know, is there anything else that you would love to add about KaiZen? You know, why is it that you want to get up? Let's be honest. No one gets up, wakes up and goes, "Wow, you know what? I'd love to get out of bed and go to work." All right, you know, no one does unless they found something that they're incredibly passionate, purposeful, love, joy, whatever words you want to stick in there. Why is it that this drives you to do this, Kyle?
Really simple, mate. It's seeing the difference in people. I'm not going to turn around and say it's not what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a philanthropic thing at all. It's not about. I'll be brutally honest. I feel good about myself when I help other people feel good about themselves. So or it's me moving towards pleasure. Pleasure in myself.
There you go. Kyle Hargreaves loves to pleasure himself with his clients. That's it. He said it on air. No, that's cool, Kyle. Is there anything else that you would like to add in this little chat?
Not really. I think I've kind of given a pretty much an overview of what KaiZen's all about. I've not really gone into methods too much, because as our mentor Dax always says, methods are many, principles are few. So methods will adapt for each person that walks through the door. Some people are going to want more, or going to want or need more of one thing than someone else. And obviously I kind of have a basic structure in place of the way I do things and the way I like to do things, and also the way that I know works. But yeah, it's more about KaiZen, as like I said at the beginning. It's a set of principles. I use that in combination with what I've called my 12 martial concepts, which are all about taking principles that I've learned from martial arts and applying them to life outside of martial arts. Okay, so there's 12 core concepts. I'm not going to go through them all here because otherwise we will be up 8 hours on our on our hangout.
Like, nah, sorry boys, you've got to cut it short.
Yeah, there'll be like a walking stick come through out of nowhere and drag me off there.
Brilliant.
But yeah, it's basically a principled approach. So everything's based on those principles, the principles that we know work.
Yeah.
And it's just about creating an individual journey for that person and allowing them to get to where they want to go in the time that best suits them, in the way that best suits them, as opposed to just another I'll move more, eat less, do this what I tell you, and stick to it for the rest of your life. Kind of approach.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of along the lines of like one of the questions I get asked sometimes is about like the nutrition. It's like, oh, what's the best diet for me? And it's like, well, the one that creates the results that you want, that you can stick to for the rest of your life, and it doesn't compromise your long-term health.
Exactly.
You choose it. You choose your diet, not me. How do you help people get around that? Because I know, obviously, we've come along this journey. We used to do the whole, do these reps, do these sets, do this nutrition. How do you, and I don't know if you find this, but I know I do, sometimes people are a bit flummoxed at the start where they're like, what do you mean you're not going to tell me what to do? How do you help them get their head around the process of choosing for themselves?
I normally start with a really sort of, or not a facetious question, but sometimes it can come across as facetious, but actually it's meant to be a genuine question. How has that worked for you so far?
So it is just facetious then, Kyle. Just tell it like it is.
Don't know. Seriously, I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, the problem is like if we look at this idea of meanings and stuff again that we kind of sort of touched on earlier, we create our meanings based on our experience and by what people tell us and by what we're bombarded by in the media and all this other stuff, right? So we've already got kind of an idea in our heads of what we should be doing. And people think I'm a little bit crackers when I tell them sometimes, you know, if you want to lose weight, first thing you've got to do is learn to breathe. They look at me like I'm a nutcase. But basically, all I do is just tell them the story, you know, tell them why, just explain it to them, and in a very, very simple way. So, you know, we know that breathing helps because it changes the blood, the acidity and pH levels in the blood. It changes hormonal profiles. It reduces cortisol and adrenaline output, which then affects digestion, which then affects what the body can and can't absorb, and so on and so forth, right? So there's a very, very simple explanation behind it to something that's very scientific, and it's just about helping them understand the story and kind of get where I'm coming from, really. I mean, not everybody buys into the approach, and you know, if someone's not bought into the approach, then they generally don't tend to become clients. You know, it's like anything. Sometimes people are very, very fixed on their beliefs and their views, and you know, if that's what they feel is going to work for them, that's great. But a lot of people that have kind of had those views or have been in a position where they've tried everything else and they've got to the point where, you know, they just can't find what they're looking for, they tend to be a little bit more open-minded, because they've tried the same thing that everyone else is trying, and for whatever reason, whether it's too stressful, whether it's just too much of a demand, whether they just hate it, or, you know, it could just be something that it's just not suited to who they are. You know, it hasn't worked for them up to this point. So you tend to find that for those people, they tend to be a lot more open to it. And as long as it's explained and they can understand it and it makes sense, then they can be quite open to it. So yeah, all I do is I just tell them the story of why, tell them why it's important, and you know, and answer any questions they have about it and help them just get really clear on it, and try and help them get clarity as to how it can help serve them get towards where they want to go.
Okay, that's pretty cool. That's really cool. Thanks very much for saying that. Now, there's a word in there that you've used quite a lot, Kyle, clarity. You know, how does that influence you and help your clients as well? What is it that clarity means to you? And, you know, what do you help? Sorry, let me rephrase that. How do you help clients gain clarity?
Was that how do I help a client get clarity?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So a lot of it is through a process of exploration. So kind of looking at what it is they want and looking at why they feel it's holding them back. And like we said earlier, right, there's usually varying levels of what's going on. You know, the thing is not the thing, in a sense that just because someone's coming into fitness, they don't give a crap about how fit they are. What they care about is how people kind of perceive them and how it affects their relationships or how it affects their health or whatever, right? So there's usually kind of levels behind what it is. So they tend to come in at often they tend to come in sort of more on a superficial level. And then we start just to dig a little bit deeper about what the meaning behind the thing is and what that's going to allow them to have. And not just that as well, but something I call qualifiers. Well, people quite often have qualifiers, like qualifying goals, if you like. Oh, well, you know, I can't go on holiday, or I can't go and do that exercise until I've lost, or I won't get a personal trainer until I've lost this amount of weight, or whatever, right? So there's usually something in the way that they've tied some kind of meaning around that means that it precludes them from having what they want. So we explore what it is they want, and we just find a way of ditching the qualifiers. So, well, how do we reframe it? How can we get around, you know, not being or not having or that thing, and focusing more on what the thing you actually want? So, for example, you know, if someone's looking to attract a new partner, you know, and they tell themselves, well, I can't find a new partner until I've lost X amount of weight. And I was like, well, okay, so what can you do what else can you do to kind of make yourself feel like you're in a position where you can go out and speak to people? What, you know, whether it be looking at changing your hair or the clothes you wear or whatever else, and just start really focusing on those other little bits. And so we kind of reduce the need for the qualifier. So that's one thing. And also kind of like defining what they want as well. So, you know, because people are often quite clear on the things they don't want. Oh, well, I don't want to do this job anymore, or, you know, I don't want to work these hours. I don't want to earn this. I don't want to just earn this amount of money, or, you know, I don't want to be fat, or whatever it is, right? People are quite clear on what they don't want. So we can use that as well, just to kind of get sort of really clear what it is on what they want, and then start looking at, well, okay, so this is what you want. Okay, you're really clear on that. And once we're kind of at that point where we feel we've got a clear answer, we can start looking at, well, okay, so what's going to get you there? What are the things what are the actions? What are the behaviors? What are the thoughts? And all those things that are going to help you get there. Okay, and how are you in line with those at the moment? You know, behaving, acting, thinking, feeling in a way that's going to take you there. And what can we do? And it's all about, you know, I talked about the animal attack earlier and predictions and responses. Yeah, it's all about sort of creating those predictions and responses and creating that safety so that the brain will actually lay off a little bit and go, okay, I can do this. I'll let you do that. Yeah. So it is really kind of a process of exploration as opposed to a process of instruction.
Like you say, it's exploring, and I take it like much like, you know, any time in coaching, it's just about asking better questions.
Sorry, Matt, say that again.
The exploration process, you know, you said it's exploration instead of instruction. It's just about asking better questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it also puts that person in a position where they actually have a bit more a focused way of thinking or looking at a situation and actually getting it out of their system. Because a lot of the time, and we've all been there, where we can't see the wood for the trees. There's so much going on, we just can't find any clarity. And actually, I had a call with somebody recently who's looking at a career change as such. By the end of the first call, she realised she knew absolutely everything she needed to do. Whereas, and she'd managed to actually break it down in such a way, and we managed to sort of clear some of the things that were holding her back. We managed to unblock that, and by the end of the call, she had a really clear strategy of the things that she needed to do. But she also knew that she needed to do one thing at a time. So the way that we'd organised it and the way that she wrote it down was in such a way that it didn't create an overwhelm for her. She could focus on doing that one thing at a time, and when that thing was done, move on to the next thing. And each little thing would take her further and further towards where she wanted to be. So all we did really was just use that process of just creating safety, you know, have a better prediction and a better response pattern. Deal with the rubbish that was floating around in her head that was creating the blockage. I've managed to reframe that and, you know, work with that a little bit so that that wasn't an issue anymore. So, like you say, it is a case of just asking better questions and really allowing the client or the person, you know, to sit and actually come up with their own answers. Because although everybody sort of wants answers to their questions and wants a solution to their problem, the ones that stick the best are the ones that they come up with themselves, that they know actually are going to fit in with their life, as opposed to the one where you just go, right, do that. Because it's all well and good for me to turn around and tell you to do something, but that might not fit in with your life. You know, I mean, you've got kids, Dave. So if I was to turn around and tell you, or if you wanted to be a successful personal trainer, you've got to spend every day, six days a week, weekdays from 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the kids come home from school till 10 o'clock at night. And every day, all day during the weekend as well. If you want to be successful, if I was to tell you that, what's the first thing that would come out of your mouth?
Something that I can't say in case one said little people reach through the door right now.
Yeah. So the best solutions are the ones that people can actually work with themselves with a little bit of guidance and a little bit of focus and a little bit of direction. you know, and a bit of clarity as well, like we talked about, peeling away the layers and finding out the reasons why and what's important and what they really want and all this, that, and that. Yeah, and using those better questions to help them come up with their own answers, because everybody's got their own answers to some degree, you know. There might be the odd occasion where they haven't, in which case you can help them find those answers and point them in the right direction so that they can go and find them if they need to or whatever else. But for the most part, most people have their own answers. So it's just allowing them that safe space and that head space, if you like. It's almost like allowing them your own brain space, just so that they can actually see it from a different perspective and work it out for themselves in a way that's going to work for them, as opposed to being dictated to in a way that isn't.
Yeah, no, totally. I get that when I'm doing the physical rehab with people. I sort of literally say, right now you're here plugged into the system. I'm going to take you over there, rebuild you, and then replug you back in. I'm going to give you 2.0 in a safe environment, and then we're effectively going to test run 2.0 in real life. Because a lot of it, like you say, is about prediction and response. And if it doesn't work in real life, then it's a waste.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's got to fit in with that person's needs, that person's lifestyle, and because that's the thing we said about habit, right? If it becomes too stressful, if it doesn't fit in, if they don't enjoy it, you know, then no one's ever going to stick to it. When was the last time you really stuck to something that actually every time you do it, you think, I can't wait until this is over?
Oh dear Lord, yeah, there's a few stories I'm sure I can share, but this is going out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I'll pass on that one. But yeah, no, totally. You just don't do it. You know, you just got to find a way to make everything as fun as possible. You know, that's totally, utterly understandable. That is absolutely awesome. Kyle, we've actually managed to have a conversation without it dying, and I'm going to regret saying this out loud for like 35 minutes. I'm a bit scared.
And we've been sensible.
And it was semi-sensible, I know. Good Lord, when's the last time that happened?
To be fair, that wasn't my plan. My plan was to be really immature and really unsensible. But you actually asked me questions, and I was like, okay, I suppose I better give him an answer.
Yeah, sorry, Kyle. I don't know. Well, what else do you want to chat about and be totally unsensible? No, man. I think it's nice. You know, it is really nice to do it this way. You know, sometimes they can be interesting questions. I just think for the first one, you know, I find out a bit more about you, or actually we get it out for the public, a bit more about you, you know, ask me the same stuff, whatever. That's the more formal one. It's like an introduction, you know, because if all of a sudden these two idiots start coming on and just talking about completely random rubbish, you know, we do genuinely want to help people. There is a reason for this, yeah. And we'll get other people to ask questions and answer them later on, and we'll be a little bit less stiff maybe, but I just think for the first one, maybe it's a nice introduction, you know, it's a warm up.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
There's hints of the sense of humour in there. No, that is absolutely awesome, Kyle. Thank you very much for that, mate. That was clarifying that the KaiZen method. That sounds absolutely superb. Interesting one. I'll ask you this one. So I got asked by a client recently. How do you deal with people? Not all exercises are airy fairy. We know that there's some really practical stuff in there. But how do you deal with people's questions around it? You say, that's a little bit too airy fairy for me. You know, if they've got questions along the process, and there's some really practical stuff in there, I'm sure. And they go, that one right there, that's a bit too airy fairy. You know, that's a bit woo woo.
Okay, so the question was, how do I deal with people that go, oh, this is a little bit too soft or a little bit airy fairy or not quite what I was expecting, sort of thing, yeah?
Yeah.
Right, okay. That's a good question. So first thing I'll get them to do is kind of define, you know, let's do this right now, right? Define hairy fairy for me. What do you mean by that? You know, what does that mean to you?
To me personally, it brings back memories of Eric Cartman from South Park basically going, this is a bunch of tree-hugging hippie crap. Screw you guys, I'm going home. That's the first thing that comes to mind. in a more realistic sense, it's basically it's not as practical and it's not going to help in real life. It's like it's conceptual. That's the good way to describe it. Yeah, it's a concept, not an experience or a practical experience. And it's kind of like, right, I'm conceptual, I'm dreaming, I'm thinking. It's not a bad thing. How do I make it real? Does that make sense?
Okay, so you can't quite see, how it fits in with your life as such, or you can't quite see the sort of the pragmatic or the practical side of it. You said practical, didn't you?
Bingo.
So
That's a big thing. That's just me personally, and I know I'm quite a pragmatic person. Sometimes it's a strength, other times it's not. But yeah, that would be my big one. It's a bit too woo-woo.
okay, so if we look at actions, right, we get to a place where would you say, all of your actions have all of the things that you've done have got you to where you want to be in life necessarily?
As in, have they got me to? As in, am I where I want to be, or based on right now? To be honest, yeah, of course they have. All my actions and what I've done have driven me to exactly where I am. Are they the best actions, and am I where I want to be? No. So have I taken steps that are slightly out of alignment? Yes. So,
Okay, so without going into specifics, right, in terms of what those steps were, but for a lot of those steps that kind of took you in a direction maybe necessarily didn't want to go, how much conceptualizing was there behind those actions as opposed to the ones that served you?
oh, totally, Kyle. I sat there, thought about it. It wasn't entirely impulsive in any way, shape, or form. There's no one ever. No, totally. There was no conscious thought. It was just pure impulse, entirely reactive.
Okay, so given a situation where maybe you haven't quite put some of the thought or the conceptual side into it, would you say that you have been a bit impulsive and a bit rash in the past, and maybe it's led you to do things that don't necessarily serve where you are now?
No, of course not.
Okay, so look at those times when you have actually taken actions that have best served you, that have got you closer to where you want to be and have worked out. Would you say that you did those impulsively, or would you say that actually there was a bit of thought behind them?
No, there's always thought and come up with some kind of. It doesn't have to be an exact plan, but you've at least got an idea, and you act based on the idea.
Okay, so would you say that having that idea and actually spending and having an idea in your head that you've kind of given a bit of thought to actually affected how your practical outcome was?
Yes, Kyle, I would say that having a woo-woo idea in my head would actually help my practical outcome. There we go. We just proved it right there and then. Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Little mini coaching session. Love it. Superb.
Yeah, but on a serious side though, because the aim was to answer the question, how do you deal with the fairy stuff? It's really simple. You demonstrate how it works.
Yeah.
Clarify. It's like what we said before, right? Everything comes back to meaning. So if someone thinks that something's airy-fairy, there's usually a meaning behind it, right? It usually means that maybe they don't necessarily see it being something that's going to work for them, or airy-fairy meaning, if you're working with guys, it's a bit girly, that's not manly enough for me, or else, it doesn't matter. It could be really far out there. It could be something really simple. It's just about clarifying the meaning behind the thing. And reframing it and redefining it slightly. So yeah, I mean, for some people it may be a bit airy-fairy, but if what they've been doing isn't working for them right now, or it hasn't got them to where they want to be, then maybe they actually need a bit of airy-fairy as such. But you just have to redefine that meaning. So actually, what we've done is made it more practical by what was I saying? I've completely lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, we're making it more practical, or making it appear more practical. Is that we kind of reframed it in the sense, well, actually, in this instance, when I haven't actually given things some thought and had any clarity behind it, I tend to act impulsively, and sometimes those decisions don't take me to where I want to go. They take me in a complete opposite direction, and I'll end up banging my head against the wall for doing it. Whereas when I actually put a bit of effort and thought and preparation, if you like, it actually allows you to be more practical and take those better steps forward. So yeah, so how to deal with the people that sort of go airy fairy is literally just clarify their meaning and sneakily demonstrate actually what it is it does.
Yeah, I like sneaky demonstrations of clients. So it's funny you should say that. I had a client who joined up with me in January. He's an ex-rugby player and blah blah blah. And like you said about the guy, right? Stereotypical, played rugby at very very high level, and he was not up for the coaching initially. He came in and was like, want a program, want to be told what to do, give me my nutrition, exactly like that. And as we sort of gone through the process, and the other day he texted me because I asked him stuff about like exercise and nutrition, and the response I got back was absolutely phenomenal. It was like, actually, Dave, that's not going to work for me. However, based on what I'm thinking and my values, this is my approach and my solution. And and then he started asking me questions, and I'm like, awesome. I'm like, I'm being coached by the student. So my reply was, oh, Padawan, done well, you have. Graduated to Jedi. Yeah, no. And it's, like you say, it's one of the things that I love about the coaching personally is it's really empowering when you get a client that like that's initially like, tell me what to do, tell me what to do. They're almost like, it's like junkies. It's the only way I can. They're looking for their next fix. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you go about that process, Kyle? Of getting them from the tell me what to do, tell me what to do, I'm so dependent on you, to almost like an interdependent being where they can think for themselves, make the decisions and come up with, and only every so often maybe come back to you and go through that, and they're really stuck.
Sorry, mate. You've gone a bit muffly again. I didn't catch it last bit.
How do you take clients through that process of where they're dependent on you entirely at the start, where they're like, oh, tell me what to do, to almost effectively become mini coaches of themselves?
Okay, good question. So we start really simple, right? There are sometimes there will be little things that I get them to do, or I would encourage them to do, sort of from an instructional perspective, but generally only minor things, and I always encourage them to do it in a way that works for them. And if it's something that's not working for them, we ditch it. So it's not completely instructional, but a lot of it is just having the open conversations and actually talking to them about it, and actually, so something that a really useful question, right, is if someone's kind of sort of going, well, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. It's just kind of, okay, so how's that really going to help you? Well, what are the pitfalls? What's going to work and what's not going to work? And a lot of the time, when you actually start getting into that kind of thing and they actually start thinking about it, and they go, well, actually, this would work for me, but this wouldn't. So then all of a sudden you've started that whole coaching thing by them actually defining what's not going to work for them, and then defining what will. So you go, okay, so that approach to diet isn't going to work for you because, okay, so what do you think would work for you? And they go, well, okay, well, maybe I could do this or maybe I could do that. So it's not really a complicated thing. If it's a case of, instead of just going, okay, yep, so I'll do that for you straight away, go, okay, that's fine. So you want some help with that. So let's talk about that. What is it you really need, and get them to define what they really need. Ask them questions about what will and won't work, and get them to actually start answering their own questions and coming up with their own stuff. And then kind of working more from an agreement perspective, so that it's not a case of me now dictating what they are or what they aren't going to do. It's about them actually deciding for themselves what they're going to do, and I will guide them where necessary, and help them do what they want to do, and then just constantly reviewing it. It's a lot of the time it is people run in and they throw the ball at you, and all you got to do is just while you're talking to them, he's offering the ball, and the more they're talking to you, they take the ball back and they don't even realise they've taken it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, totally. It's also interesting, as like you say, like the strategies that you come up with when you're asking questions, like for clients. I don't know about you, but when people walk in the door, they almost have like a preconception of what a personal trainer is going to be like, and you know, some of them are actually almost intimidating, especially with some of the. I'm going to try not to swear on this video, Kyle, but I'm not going to do a very good job on this one. Some of the crap that is out there on social media about, you know, you just got to do more, fat is, or sweat is fat crying tears, and you know, they're almost like, it's like they're just scared to walk in the door first of all. How do you help your own clients get over that, you know, that fear the first moment they walk in the door to get to be like that this is actually as bad and it is going to be fun?
Really simple. When they walk in the door, I give them permission to do the things that they're going to enjoy.
Yeah.
Or more to the point, get them to give themselves permission.
Yeah.
So it's not about the gym routines or anything like that. If I get a client come in who's really intimidated by the gym, then I'm not going to set her a gym program to do 5 times a week. So, you know, we'll explore. Okay, so what do you enjoy doing? You know, it might be something really as simple as taking a dog for a walk. It might be going swimming. It might be going to a dance class. It might be going running. It might be anything where that isn't the gym. You know, if they really don't enjoy it and they feel threatened every time they sort of walk through the door, there's no point in me trying to force them to do that, because one, it won't stick, or a lot of the time it won't stick, and two, they're already in a high state of stress before they've actually started doing anything. So again, if we look at it from a training perspective, if you've got someone that's going in the gym to lose weight and they've already had a massive dump of adrenaline and cortisol because they're stressed, and then they're going to go and do a workout, you know, it's not necessarily going to be productive. You know, the body's just not going to respond to it. So yeah, I don't market myself as a personal trainer anymore. I haven't done for quite some time, and even in like any marketing stuff that I do put out on my website and whatever else, you know, I kind of tell the story of what I do, and I don't really talk about being a personal trainer. I don't talk about doing gym plans or anything like that. You know, if I get someone that comes to me, they enjoy the gym and they like working out in the gym, then great. You know, then that's fine. That's not a problem. But for those that don't, it's looking at the bigger picture. You know, just exercise alone, just going to the gym isn't the only way to lose weight. You know, if that's what you want to do, you want to lose weight, there's more than one way of doing it. So it's about looking at creating those healthy relationships with food and exercise to make exercise fun again. And the only way to do that is to allow them, or get them to allow themselves to do things that they like. You know, start slow and gradually build it up. So you might get someone who comes in, you know, they may be in not the best physical condition and they feel they need to lose weight. They might not be up to going swimming or running or anything like that, but they might be quite happy just to go for a walk for 20 minutes a day. You know, start them with that, review it. If they feel more comfortable, then encourage them to progress it up to whatever, you know. So it's very much, like I said to you at the very beginning, it's very much an involved process in the sense that not involved, inclusive. So it's about getting the clients, or working with the clients, to create the best journey for them, as opposed to just being another program. And you know, not everyone's going to buy into it. The reality is, not everybody's going to be in a place where either they want, or they're in the right kind of place where this is the sort of thing they want. Not everybody's going to be there. Some people are going to actively want those kinds of harder workouts, or to be pushed and to be made to feel sick. I mean, I actually had an application form at the beginning of the year when I was running a program, and there was along the lines, I want to be punished without mercy. I'm thinking, hang on, is this the right application form here? Have they got the right website?
Yeah.
But
did you put a couple of digits wrong, and were you looking for something else?
But 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 the people do have that mindset, and that's fine. If it works for them, then there's no problem with that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking it in any way, shape, or form. What, because the whole eat less, move more, no pain, no gain model, it does work for some people. There are people out there that are out there following these programs, and it's working for them. But there's a lot of people out there that it's not working for. So they tend to be the people that come to people like us because the mainstream isn't doing the job for them.
Yeah, that's something, Kyle, and I know you feel the same. That's something I'm massively passionate about. And
You're snorkeling again.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to suppress my I'm trying to suppress my my swearing, Kyle, because like you said about the mainstream stuff, there are people that it does work for, and it works incredibly well. But there's also, like you say, in fact, probably the rest of the population, the other 95%, where it doesn't. And I don't know. I suppose it saddens me in some way because I love the fitness side. I love the rehab side of stuff I do. I love coaching, and it really saddens me when you see an industry still doing the same thing as, I mean, we've been in this for, I've been in it for 14 years. You're not far off, are you, Kyle? Like 10 maybe?
Yeah, about 10 years, I think, this year.
Yeah. And, have you seen the message change in our industry?
No, of course not.
No.
But it is changing now. There are more and more coaches or people that are making that transition. And you have got people at the forefront of that, like your Daxes, your Paul Checks, and all those guys. They are creating a shift within the industry, but it's still only the minority. And I think you'll tend to find, I think a lot of it comes down to like a personal journey as well. I think you kind of almost have to go through that phase because, we were both there once, weren't we? We both kind of subscribed to it to a degree at one point.
Yeah.
And it's an evolution that we've had from our own experience, from our own personal development, from the clients that we've worked with, our successes and our failures, because we've had both. That's part of the game. So there is an evolution sort of happening, but I think a lot of the problem I think lies in the fact is that people want to hear, or the industry, or the people that are in charge of the industry, the marketers and everything else. There's this like we were saying about meanings earlier, this whole meaning of, right, weight loss, getting fit, it means working hard, it means eating clean, it means doing this, it means doing that, and that's kind of like the core message running through the industry. And it's what people, it may not be what they want to hear, but it's what they expect to hear. And I think that's been set up over such a period of time that it is the expectation. So anything that kind of differentiates away from that is like, ooh, voodoo nonsense. What's that?
Awesome. So are you trying to tell me, Kyle, that the industry regulating board and various other personal trainers are going to start coming after us with pitchforks and trying to burn us at the stake, is what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah. How's your self-defense training going, by the way?
Fortunately, or unfortunately, actually, not great. No, I don't know, Kyle. Maybe it's just me, right? But and I know something that you've got because I've known you for that long now, that you've got quite an analytical mind as well, right? And I don't understand, I suppose, and I know this is going quite deep for your introduction, Kyle, but why do you think it is that there is more access to personal trainers, boot camps, various weight loss products of any kind, whatever, but obesity, chronic health conditions, self-esteem issues, mental health, and they're all tied into the one thing. They've gone up. They have consistently risen over the last X amount of years. Yeah. And I know we can say, oh, there's more stuff for people. Yeah, maybe there is, but sorry, but numbers don't lie. Numbers never ever lie, and the statistics are showing. Let's get bluntly honest here, Kyle. As an industry, we're failing.
Yeah, you're right.
We are. End of.
But again, right, look at the way lifestyles change, or the way or our culture, if you like, has shifted over the last 10 years. I mean, We're more and more dependent on technology. We're a prime example.
Yep.
We're doing it right now. So yeah, we're feeding into the problem, Dave.
Get us out, Kyle.
Yeah.
Get us out. Unplug us from the matrix.
But no, we're more and more dependent on technology, right? So, I mean, I don't know the stats, but if you look at online programs and DVDs and everything else, I bet they've skyrocketed over the last 10 years, or a big chunk of that part of the industry. And again, a lot of the message hasn't changed. They're still churning out the same message of eat less, move more, right?
Yeah.
And people are doing more. But they're not necessarily doing more exercise or more healthy stuff. What they're doing is they're working longer hours. They're spending more and more time stuck in front of screens. They're more and more stressed, under more and more pressure, and more constantly under threat, which governs their choices. When they eat under threat, they make their food choices under threat. Coming back to this idea of, again, we're talking about threat and the shift that it has in the body and the brain and the nervous system. We've already said, if you're already stressed when you eat, your body's not going to use that food. It's null and void. So, or to a degree anyway, not completely, but to a degree. I think a lot of it is down to this idea of lifestyle, and the fitness industry are still spouting this message of do more, do more, do more, do more. But people are already doing more, when really maybe the message should be do less, do less, do less, do less.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the industry is failing, because again, it comes back to that expectation. If the fitness industry was to suddenly do a change, could you imagine, right, what would happen to things like gym memberships and programs and everything else if all of a sudden all the instructors and all the big wigs in the fitness industry and all the corporate giants in the industry turn around and said, actually, the answer to being healthier and losing more weight is to do less? What impact would that have on their business?
Initially it would go down, but then surely that would be then the responsibility of the business to be able to come up with a way to maybe not do less to start with, and we'll coach you through it. And it's funny, I was watching a TV program the other day, and I know we've seen the example with Dax Moyer, the whole sniper thing. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Yeah, and then this guy on the TV program was basically saying, don't try and rush it, slow down, breathe, take your time, all right? Yeah, steady the rifle, all right? And it's almost like that. It's the stuff that people don't want to do, but it's that stuff. That's the underlying principle. That's the foundation, because if you do that, then when it comes to the going fast, you can go fast without issue. You don't get the injuries, the illness, the everything else that comes along with it. Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think that it would be the responsibility of the business to come up with a way for people to do that, so that to say, look, this is the foundation, but if you do this foundation now, we'll give you can do the sexy stuff and continue to do the sexy stuff.
You're right. And this is the cynic in me coming out. They're already making more money doing what they're doing, so why would they change it?
Ooh, okay. I haven't got a counter argument, Kyle, because I believe
that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, look, we've both worked in commercial gyms, haven't we? Right? Yeah. We both know for a fact that the only reason those places survive is they rely on the fact that they tie people into contracts and people don't turn up and use it.
Yeah.
Look at when we first started out. That we won't mention any names, but that gym that we both started working in wasn't a huge gym. Right, what was the maximum capacity? 150, maybe?
Yeah.
No, probably actually less than that. Right?
Yeah.
Something like two, or when we were working there, somewhere around 2,500 members on the books.
Yeah, 2.5.
All right. Yes, obviously people come at different times of day, but how many people would walk through the door on an average day? Probably
700 to 800. I remember talking to the membership people.
Yeah, so what? Say a third of the membership base were actually active.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if everybody became active all of a sudden, and you couldn't fit everybody, and they'd lose members left, right, and centre, wouldn't they? Yeah, they rely on the fact that people pay out for gym memberships. They're tied into a contract, and they know that for 2/3 of their membership base, that they will last for about 6 weeks. After that, they'll stop coming, but they'll be tied into a contract and they still pay.
Yeah,
That's
no,
how they make their money.
yeah, shame. I'm going to have to leave it there because the little people have decided to to wake up.
Is
We've
that
actually managed.
is that the people listening to our webcast? They've all of a sudden, oh God, we've been sitting here this long and they've just woken up.
Yeah, all my kids, one of the two. Yeah, they've decided to wake up from their nap. We've actually managed an hour, dude. Wow.
Wow, that's
Good Lord. I'll have to ask you a favour next time we do this. Can I get you to ask my questions? Is that all right?
yeah, of course I will.
Awesome. I'll invite you to a Google Hangout, which may take me about a year or two to master. So the second episode might not be for a while.
What I'll do exactly the same. I'll set it all up, and then we'll work out a name for it and stuff. This is probably going to be of no interest to you guys that are actually watching. I just haven't stopped the broadcast. But yeah, we'll work out all those little bits, and we'll make sure that you've got the link shared, and you can use it and embed it on your websites and stuff.
Yeah, indeed. Awesome. Thank you very much. You know, so Kyle, I've just realised who we are. Have you? Do you watch Comic Book Men? Have you ever watched that?
I haven't. No, I've watched superhero shows on IGN, which is probably something similar.
Yeah, Kevin Smith from Jay and Silent Bob. They basically, yeah, him at Comic Book Men. They're all the guys from the comic book store. They basically do a podcast and just chat complete rubbish about comics. Basically, I've just realised what we're actually doing. Awesome. There we go. Thank you very much, Kyle. I don't know if you want to stop the broadcast so the little people can come and say hello.
No worries. I'll stop in a sec. Guys, Dave, thank you. And guys, thank you for watching. If you managed to stick it out for this long as well. If you want to get in touch with us and start sending us some questions, because after we've finished our intro videos, the next one will be Dave, obviously. We're going to start answering questions for you guys. So yeah, if you want to start sending them in, yeah, please do, and we will debate the hell out of those in future videos.
Indeed. Awesome.
Dave, brilliant. Pleasure. Yeah, we'll be in touch and I'll speak to you soon.